welcome Arna to the chat, if you will, to this group. Arna is similar, just some similarities and some synergy around some of the work that y'all do at NAMI OC, where they work with, well, I would love for her to talk about it, but particularly her warm line and providing affordable access to individuals for to deal with some behavioral health issues. And one of the topics we were talking about was this idea of resiliency, and really not just for our clients. We know that they go through a set of they need to have a set of resiliency skills, whether that's applying for jobs and not hearing back, or having that kind of job search fatigue, or just kind of dealing with their own set of barriers. But us as as a community also are going through these times where we're needing to be resilient in the way that we can continue to serve our community with now maybe some limited resources. So welcome, Arna. We look forward to hearing from you. And thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much. And it's really, really great to get in front of all of you. Some of you I know in different ways. It's great to see your face here today. I'm going to actually try to go back to a screen. There I am, so I can see everyone. I'd like to do this really informal, almost as a philosophy group, okay? Because I really think, we can all develop, and maybe, Bianca, we can keep a list here of some of what resiliency techniques. I really wanted to approach it on. I love to work on the mind, body, spirit level, the physical, mental, spiritual level here of resiliency. Let's just kind of look at where we all are. Wormline was greatly affected by cuts. After 15 years, our budget went from 12 million to nothing. And where the resiliency I see also, I want to add a level of called creativity here, as really thinking out of the box. So we've all heard the statement, as one door closes, another one opens. And there's a lot of excitement there. And I'm going to look at not only us as providers to these particular populations, because we need to put our best face and give hope. That's one of the things, if I look at the values again of NAMI, NAMI is about compassion. It is about integrity. Giving hope is very important, in accountability. And we really are out there, just to give a little background on what we are for Orange County, and we've been here for 40 years, is we are an advocacy and educational and support for those family members, friends, and loved ones that have mental health conditions. We have a number of signature programs in the community, support groups that we offer, and then our warm line. And maybe many of your clients have used our warm line. So we found ourselves with very short notice. I kind of maybe will talk a little quickly about the warm line and how to keep the hope and resiliency up. Okay, as I kind of go through our case study, we did have an RFP, which we won without contenders. We were in budget discussions, and we had a plan. We knew there'd be a cut. And then we were in budget discussions one day, and then we were given notice we had been sunset, along with 30 plus others under the title of prevention. Now, at that moment, and I think where the parallel is, whether you're a big organization, a small organization, or the person who's trying to get out there in the workplace, there's certain realities. And how you see that reality is everything. So that is the first place of resilience, is to be able to look in front of you and see it through a lens, and I'm going to call it a large lens. And here is the lens that I think builds the most resiliency. It's a lens of that everything happens for a reason in life and that there is something greater here playing out and going, what are the opportunities of this experience and what are our learnings? So anything I'm talking about today could also be discussed with the populations you're working with. Maybe you're already doing that, but this concept of being able to reframe a circumstance as a blessing, I call it reframing as a blessing. Now, at first, when you look at it, it's a pretty devastating. We faced 140 layoffs. Nobody wanted to do that. Working with the county, we had certain deliverables and restrictions. So, certainly, what happened with this is it opened up the door that all of a sudden we could recreation, again, creativity, a model without restrictions, without having to go ask for permissions anymore. So it opened up an entire pathway. I remember I heard that and I thought, great, they just opened the cage up. And by the way, we are in a great relationship with the county. um, they were really between a rock and a hard place. It wasn't their fault. It was all these other factors and Prop 1, airport fire, and I think we all know why our funding got cut. But to build resilience is you have to have a big picture view of what's going on. Often I look at, what if you're standing on top of a mountain? I love visualization. I do a lot of work with it. And you look below at your life. You're going to see there's a lot of spaciousness and opportunity there versus, of course, we're looking at housing, we're looking, I can't pay the bills, all of this. One might think, you know what, we have no time for this. But I'm going to say, a lot starts going on when you see big picture. So I'm going to go back again to our group at the NAMI Warm Line as we face this reality. So here's something very interesting that happened. We realized that the only way we could do it is with volunteers. And if we look back at who we really are, we started as NAMI mommies, volunteers. So we, in a way, kind of had lost our way. And all of this brought us back to life purpose. That's the other thing, this concept here of how darkness or density is really there, the term suffering, to bring us back to life purpose in life. So, what was just amazing is all of a sudden I was like, volunteers, this isn't new. Wait a minute, I came in as a volunteer. It got us back to our center point. And that gets us back to values. And I'm sure a lot of you do with clients, the idea of helping them find their values. Because here, now I'm going to switch between, again, the big picture, more of the spiritual approach, the learning model in life. That builds tremendous resiliency. But the more that we and our clients are living their authenticity, I call it their true north, it's going to have flow to it. And the more you go against it, and I think all of you know, like if you've ever gone against something in your life, or it's you get a headwind, there's a reason, because I do believe we all have duties. What does duty mean? We all have contracts. We all have callings in our life. And, the idea of a true calling is when you're in alignment of that calling, things are going to flow and you will be supported. Now, I think as we go along on this journey together of resiliency, and like I said, I'm using our warm line and how, everything started to fall into place as we made this turn to accept what is. So that gets into the term radical acceptance. It's a big one
Mhm.
in psychology. One of my favorite philosophers, Marcus Aurelius, talks about radical acceptance, saying that, whatever fate, I'm going to capsulize it, whatever fate brings your way, embrace it, don't fight it, but love it with all of its heart. Like people in your life that come in your life, situations, gosh, that really does change the model for resiliency. So, would anybody in this group like to share something that they can relate to what I'm talking about here, a situation of really turning your ships to a more aligned place and noticing flow changes on it. Anybody like to share? Bianca, you're shaking your head. Do you have a
Well,
story to share on that?
well, I was, in yes, I can, but I was smiling because I was reading Frankie's comment in the chat. So I'd be curious if she's open to reading. She seems to have a poster in her office. Um, so Frankie, do you mind talking about how that poster, like what made you inspired you to post that on your office, in your
Yeah,
office?
sure. Well, it was actually a gift for one of like my mentors professionally. I am someone who struggles with a lot of imposter syndrome, and I have a lot of anxiety. Part of my, we work with people with lived experience, and I'm also a peer, and I'm someone with my own lived experience with mental health. So I recently shifted into this assistant director role last December, and this is my first management supervisor role. So with that comes a lot of celebration, but I've also struggled a lot with the imposter syndrome part. So um, I got this poster from my mentor, and she was like, "You should hang it up in your office. Like this is something that I would put there." Um, and I was like, okay, like whatever. Like I'm not gonna actually like look at it all the time, but I do a lot actually, and there's always so many situations that could happen at work where I'm like, I don't like how that went. And oh, I'm so mad at myself. Like, why did I do that? Or like, why did I make that decision? Or I could have done better. Like, that's just what goes on in my head pretty consistently. But having like a consistent reminder and practicing radical acceptance has really helped me manage all of those thoughts
That's
and
great.
feelings.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I just posted my favorite quote in the chat that from there is, I might not like it, but this is what has happened. So kind of learning to accept just that something happens. It doesn't mean that I liked what happened. That's not what that means, but I can accept that that has happened. And while I can't necessarily change the past, I can't change that decision that I made, or I can't change the outcome of that situation. However, I do have an impact on what I do in this moment. So that has been really, really helpful for me.
Yeah, and what's so great, Frankie, about that is, when we're moving forward in life, it's really about consolidation of intentional energy. So if we get bogged down in regret, as an example, it just goes inward into self-hatred. And the beauty of radical acceptance is it really moves us to a real meta level of thinking, and we'll talk a little bit about the power of being at that meta level, which is so important. But I'm wondering if anybody else here has something they'd like to share about radical acceptance, or really having to reframe a situation into a blessing in their life?
Yeah,
I
sure.
think
I can go.
Okay, great.
So
Thank you.
in another lifetime, I was a wildland firefighter for the U.S. Forest Service. I had gone to school. It was something I wanted to do. One day I saw mountains on fire and I just wanted to go up there and help, but I was told no. So I went to school, did my thing, and I applied to every station in California. And I was stuck up north next to Eureka, California, and I loved it. I was up there for 4 years. So slowly, as I gained experience, I became a permanent employee and was able to transfer to another station closer to home in LA. And that's when I was hit with the realization that not every station and every forest is created equal. I was hit with hazing. I was hit with all kinds of individuals didn't want me to succeed. So I made the conscious decision of packing my stuff up and calling it quits. And for a long time, I looked back and I thought, man, is this the right choice? Like I always saw myself doing it for 20 plus years till I retired. But then I reached out to one of my old supervisors and he's like, you know what? You did recruitment and outreach for Smokey the Bear. How about you do it for us? And at first it was a transition, but as a wildland firefighter, you're only home about 2 days out of the month. So I literally lived at work. I never got to sleep in my own bed. So now it's those little things that I get to do every day that I'm really grateful for. And sure, I missed the opportunity of being able to fight fire and the adrenaline, but I'm also helping people, but not directly, indirectly, you know? And now that I have my 6-month-old baby, I think back and if I would have still been in fire, I wouldn't be able to enjoy him being a baby. I would only see him maybe 2 days out of the month. And at least for me, that's not the way I want to raise my child. So I had to find the silver lining in a transition in my life when I thought it was going to be something impossible.
yeah,
That is so beautiful. And this
100%.
concept of the silver lining is amazing because one thing on this journey of life, sometimes as you progress, you see that everything is really in place. And just like you said, it went from firefighting to Smokey the Bear outreach. It was like, yes, you needed that first step of firefighting to go to the next step. So that's something really amazing that everything happens, in a perfect way. Okay. And a lot of times, this is the part of having faith in the process. Like, even if on the journey, and this again builds resilience versus self doubt. Oh, am I doing this wrong? You know what? Radical acceptance looks like there's a reason for this. I once received a message and I never knew what it was till I became the director of the Worm Line, which was not one of my specific intentions. It said, take your past with your present to create your future. And I go, what does that mean? When I did a meditation and I realized that there really is a journey that we walk through over and over again. We're walking through this journey of life, and it's really quite beautiful. Thank you, Bianca, how it goes. So now, for our clients that have gone through the distress that they've gone through, because we're looking at resilience, I'm going to get into a whole nother concept here, but I just want to recap. This first part is perspective, seeing things as a blessing, radical acceptance, which is really key here, and understanding that it isn't one shot to get somewhere. It's often combinations, and we are put in a certain place, and we don't really realize how everything is there to unfold. And by the way, along that journey, we may encounter times of suffering, times of being surrendered That doesn't mean giving up. It means enduring multiple events happening at the same time that is burning ego away. Okay? So, would anybody, as we kind of look at, by the way, I think you can tell today, I don't have any cards. I don't even have a script. I'm just showing up, serving at the highest way. And as things come to me to share, I am, and keeping it very, very fluid because, as I said, all of you have so much to add. Would anybody like to add anything to this first part of building resilience or sharing any special stories? B?
Hello. Yeah, your share, or you speaking about that, Arna, really resonated. So, just a little bit. I got into a really bad car accident 2 years ago, and the police officer that came to the site told me I was lucky I was alive, and I was walking away from the accident because it would be a lot worse. And it was like one of the hardest things that has ever happened to me in my life. Um, because I got injured. But what led to it, I took a year off. I went on disability for a year, and um, at the time, right, I was so angry at what happened. I was like, why me? All those things, right? And then everything led up to so many amazing moments. Like I took a year off. I got to spend time with my senior dog. A year later, I had to put her down, but I got that quality time. I didn't know at the time, right, till a year later that that was our last year together. But I was home more. We were playing, taking her to the park more. I got a surgery that had been putting off forever because I was working all the time. So I was like, this is the best time. The other component was I took a peer support specialist training. I never was able to take the training because I was always working. And then subsequently, it led me to this job, which is the best job I've ever had at REI. And so I look back at that moment and like, yes, it was really bad. Still, I don't have a car and everything like that. But at the same time, so many amazing moments came out from that. And I think that I always, when I look at the bigger picture, yes, it was something that, and I want to say this. I think I realized that I really have to pace myself in life because I was always like, workaholic, like always like, my mind on my money. And then when the accident happened, I was like, wait, there's other things in life, like my health or spending time with family, so it put that perspective. So I felt like it was the universe kind of giving us a little bit of a gentle reminder that I need to be a little bit. I was more mindful after the accident, so like things were more. I don't take a lot of things for granted anymore, and I think I got another lease on life. So that was a little bit when you were sharing that, Arna. I was like, wait, that was exactly what happened to me 2 years ago. So
That's amazing. It's similar with Irv talked about also of how that door closed and allowed him to be with his son. So there's really another force of nature, I'll call it here. I think, was it Santa Ana College had his hand up?
Anthony, yeah, Anthony.
Anthony, okay,
No,
great.
I was just trying to agree with the speaker.
Oh,
I'm not very technically savvy here. I'm sorry. I need to take a class at Santa Ana College.
so that raised hand was a high five. You were agreeing.
That that's it. It was a high five. There you go.
Awesome. There you go.
Great. Anybody else would like to share? You know what? It's funny what B talked about this car accident. I do want to share this because it's pretty crazy how thing works. By the way, prior to my work, at NAMI, I was a documentary maker and did many television shows, a lot in in medicine. I traveled around the world. I had a pregnancy, a bad delivery. That child wound up, has really brought me into healing as he has a diagnosis of schizoaffective bipolar. He's an adult now, pretty disabled. But that whole event totally shifted my world because I had such sort of a malpractice thing where I got injured and it was really hard to walk for a long time. That's my surrender where I really got moved into the world of spirituality, which was how do you want to use me? But this gets into B's story. One day I'm making a left-hand turn. I was going to a chiropractor for years and it's like, I had a neck and a jaw injury and all this stuff. Well, someone came very fast and rear ended me at a very high rate. And you know what? It put my spine back in place and my symptoms went away. That is a true story. So the thing is, you never know. This gets into back to radical acceptance again. You never know. I remember going to the chiropractor and he goes, "Oh my gosh," because it took that jolt of
Yeah.
energy again. This is the thing. This is why big picture is important. People and circumstances are used all the time to help us get back on our path. Okay? So let's move to the next level of resilience. But by the way, does everyone, just from, just those few things, do you think with your clients and yourself, you could have more resilience if you lived more in the big picture, wanted to see where the silver lining is, the blessings, and lived in radical acceptance? Is that a yes? You think you'd have more energy than you have? Yes. So now I want to talk with you about alchemy. Does anybody here understand the concept of alchemy? Anybody at all? Has anybody read the book The Alchemist? By the way, a lot of your clients read it in prison. I have worked a lot with the prison population, and that's in their library there. Because when I work with those groups, they'll go, "Oh, we know The Alchemist. We read it 20 times." Okay. Well, the beauty of that book, again, it's really a journey of resilience. So there are a few things that that book brings about. And it's number one, here is one of the concepts: the universe conspires with your heart's desire. If you want to even put that in chat right now. So
Yes.
what do you think that means? The universe conspires with your heart's desire.
I'm,
Any thoughts on that, Bianca?
I'm typing. The
Oh,
universe inspires
no, the
or
universe
conspires.
conspires. The
Conspires.
universe conspires with your heart's desire.
I feel like that's kind of what you were talking about before, where I feel like what is sort of meant for you will always sort of find you. So if there is a purpose that you have, that the universe will kind of work its magic to bring you to your purpose, and
That's
that's what I
true.
think.
And that's great. And there's something else everyone should know. The universe doesn't only work its to get you to purpose, but what do you think the universe does if you're not on purpose? Any thoughts? Where are the signs? Like, what are the signs when you are on purpose, and what are the signs when you're not? What does it feel like? Well, immediately, it feels like an uphill battle. Like, nothing is working, it doesn't flow. Like, it's how do you read? They call it in The Alchemist the omens, the messengers, the signs. Anybody have any signs in their life when they know they're on life purpose that they'd like to share?
I'll share one real quickly. It's I worked for the hospitality industry in HR. I was HR director for hotels for about 10 years. And I took a leap and decided to leave, not knowing exactly what was going to be next. And I purposely took some time off in 2019. When I came back to Orange County, I still hadn't found anything. It was taking longer than I anticipated. I was watching TV, and on February 2nd, 2020, I saw on the news that Working Wardrobes had a fire. And that fire was, as many people who know our story, was a Category 4 fire. Everything was lost, and it was our donation center and the Career Success Center. I had only one interaction with Working Wardrobes, which was a clothing drive we had done at the hotel about 5 or 6 years prior. So I started 3 days later, I started volunteering at that day but I had just moved back into the area literally 3 or 4 weeks before. And I knew that what I wanted to do was to take this HR related experience that I had, and I'd worked in nonprofits before. I just didn't know what it was going to look like and how to put it together.
That's
So,
exactly it. But do
yeah,
you see, wasn't it interesting that Working Wardrobes was put in your path
right.
years earlier?
Mm-hmm.
That's what's so amazing, how years earlier, for me as a 20-year-old college student in broadcast journalism psychology, I found myself volunteering at a notorious mental health hospitals in Washington, D.C. called St. Elizabeth's, working on a schizophrenic ward and being on a board for workforce development for people getting out of mental hospitals. Who would know that a certain decades later, I would be uh, working with the crisis of a schizophrenic son on a psychotic break,
Right.
and then now moving to NAMI. I mean, how can one not think that there is really a plan out there? Why
Right.
would that be a choice? Why would Working Wardrobes have shown up in that space? And I'm sure, Bianca, that you know your experience for HR, you get to use it all the
All
time.
the time. Yeah,
That's
all the
what I'm
time.
saying. That's called the training ground. So, by the way, why is this important for your clients? Is let them talk about their past, let them talk about what they've learned. It doesn't mean that's the end of the destination, it's a stepping stone
Right.
along the way, letting them know that there is a greater force. That's why I'm using the term the universe conspires with our heart's desire. And that we're going to be moving, and I'm watching the time. I'm going to end up with working with intentionality as something that is so important also for building resilience. But this idea of everything that happens in our life, there is a reason. That at least, anybody agree with me in this group? Yes? Okay. Does that help when you're going through something instead of, there are two roads you can go: self blame. Oh, this happened to me. This is terrible. It's my fault. Or, as Frankie says, I don't like it. It happened. All right, now let's get it to alchemy. And alchemy says, where's the gold? Okay. So the idea is what I found in my not only life experience, but after working with thousands of sessions and clients and different formats for maybe the last 35 years, I have found that it's all about alchemy when it comes to resilience, finding the gold in the darkness. Of course, Carl Jung talks about the shadow and the gold in the shadow. And I think, again, big picture here, if you can help your clients understand that there is a big picture and the fact that they have come from where they've come from, it's an important part of their whole growth process. And also, when they've had to serve the time and everything, you know, there is a certain amount of that negativity, hopefully, that's transformed. And our whole life is really about transformation. I think learning to work with the darkness, and that helps lead us to life purpose. By the way, it is the darkness and accepting that and not being afraid of it, not being afraid of our shadow parts, not being afraid of those experiences that have caused us pain. So when the alchemy, the idea of turning lead into gold, is taking suffering and being able to look at its transformative powers. So let's take a story of suffering and how it's transformed. Why do we have to suffer? Why do these things happen? Does anybody know why it's necessary for us to suffer? Anybody think about that without feeling we're being punished? Because I hear a lot sometime, and you might hear this from your clients. Oh, nothing ever good happens, everything bad, all that victim mentality. But suffering has a beautiful purpose to it. Any thoughts here? Anybody ever think about it? When something bad happens to you, how do you see it, B? If you
I mean, I think empathy comes out of that. That to me is the obvious answer. Um, and that empathy can help you connect with other experiences, other people that you wouldn't have
right, is it
considered before.
here's the truth, it's the ultimate training ground. That's going to be our new bumper sticker. Suffering is now the ultimate training ground for it really burns ego. Alchemy. That's what it's about. It really turns the lead is density into light. That's what we're really talking about. Exactly what you said. To say light, it means that it has a lightness about it. It is much more, and it's very necessary. You know, if you want to grow in this lifetime, so that's why when I'm doing my recovery groups, which is what I do for fun on the weekend, because I get so much out of it, most of the clients are coming from prison, incarceration, been on heavy drugs. I tell them you're my greatest philosophers because they have suffered so much. They, when we do our narrative therapy together, and we'll talk about some techniques before we end, they get the best messages ever that really talk about, real true meaning of life. That's where it's funny, I get this information through my work, and it really corresponds to a lot of different where they all meet. I'll say the religious, like, the Upanishads in Hinduism and in Judaism, the Kabbalah, it's like everything in the mystical area there, all these religions meet, and really talk about the idea of the meaning of life. So, that's very existential. And of course, we're going to get to some practical things before we end here. But I really wanted, a lot of times, how do you deal with a client who is suffering and blaming themselves? How do you help them alchemize that? Anybody have that experience? Would you like to share a story? How do you help them find the gold? That would be resilience again. how to find the gold nuggets in the suffering and take it to another step. Okay? Again, resilience. Help them find it. They're going to be coming in with a lot of, from their childhood, a lot of victim stories. And, the people who have suffered a lot have a lot of growth potential. That's
Arna, I
one.
think about when you say that, I think about one of the core things we try to teach clients is, how to identify the things that they're good at and what makes them unique, and turn those into transferable skills, right? And so this idea that you're talking about of suffering is that out of that came a skill set that you may not think equates to a particular job, but there is a lesson in that, and a skill that you've learned how to develop, whether it's problem solving or, again, resiliency and adaptability and all these things that can be transferable to any job, and how you use that past suffering, if you will, to tell your story in a new way. And
That's the key. That's so beautifully said. Again, I said that suffering leads us to transformation that leads us to life purpose. That's my formula, but it's a fuel. Okay. See the suffering, see that as fuel for growth and transformation, which is so beautiful. There. Now let's get to the one of the best medicines. And guess what? You don't have to buy it on the internet or go to the pharmacy. It's called gratitude. Gratitude, in terms of resilience, if you have yourself and your clients do a daily gratitude practice, your life will change in an incredible way. Now, let's get to gratitude for a moment. Is anyone here with the Emoto water studies of the Japanese researcher? No? Okay, I do this experiment in my groups. If you ever want to try it yourself. So, what they found is water is really the way energy works on water, energy transforms water. Now, all of us were made of 70% water. So, what they did in Japan is they did a study where they had meditators meditate on a body of water, but meditate negativity, okay? Anger, resentment, victimhood, like everything bad that you can think of. They just focused on the water. Then they had another group of meditators that focused on another body of water with the word gratitude. They were just so grateful. They were putting all of their energy into that water. Then I'm going to share now the findings of what they found. Anybody have an idea what the water looked like? That where all the anger, energy, and negativity, anybody have any thoughts about that? That water? Want to take a guess?
Murky or dirty or
Yes.
still or
Yes, it was very murky. It actually changed to be very cloudy. And guess what they saw under a microscope with the water molecule? What do you think it looked like, Samantha?
bacteria or just not healthy, not good.
It looks the way cancer looks.
Oh.
It was asymmetrical and it was all wild. It was disturbed. By the way, because I work with clients in health psychology, a lot of clients that do get cancer are very angry. There's some studies with that. So that kind of matches because we're made of water. Let's go to gratitude for a moment. You want to take a guess, Samantha, on the gratitude water, what it looked like?
Clean, clear.
Yes. How do you know all this? Intuition?
Just a guess.
It's right. And then what do you think it looked like under a microscope?
Like a healthy, not disease, not,
It's,
good living organisms or something in the water,
it was, looks like a snowflake under a microscope. It's perfectly symmetrical and ordered. Ordered. When you put the water, people can't believe it. I do it in these sessions and I then put the water next to each other. It really, you can see it, how cloudy that water gets. So the point is, if we, all of us here, have a daily gratitude practice. Now, let me tell you the other thing about gratitude. It isn't only, this gets into the other discussion I just had with you, it's not just giving gratitude. I'm grateful I got a new job today, or I got more money, or I'm grateful. Gratitude for things that normally you wouldn't be grateful for. I'm gratitude that I, you know, got into this opportunity with someone to work out something and now we're in a better place. Like, you go for gratitude in a full-bodied way, because the deeper you dive into gratitude, again, you're putting out your energy field. We all have an energy field around our bodies. You're putting out tremendous positive energy, resilience, and what do you think you attract in your life? Positivity. It's limitless opportunities. Okay. That's when you look younger. People see there's light in your face, you know? And it's really an ageless process, gratitude. It really can keep you young. Okay. So add that in. Aren't we talking? Isn't resilience about, dealing with this burnout of life? It's reigniting. So I find gratitude just an incredible process. Does anybody in this room practice gratitude on a regular basis? Anybody? That's a no.
Yes.
That's a who's practicing gratitude. You are, Samantha?
I would say do, but I wouldn't
That's
say I do it
me.
on a regular basis.
Yeah,
Ruby?
Ruby,
Yes.
yes.
Ruby.
Okay, Ruby, tell me about how are you doing your daily gratitude practice?
I would say from the moment I wake up, thankful for being awake, having another day,
That's right.
thankful for having a car to get to work, having healthy food to eat, really the small things.
That's beautiful. So let me ask you about gratitude here for you. Would you say that helps you with your resilience?
Um, I would say so. Yes,
Does it help do you discuss that with clients, gratitude?
I do.
Do they have practices?
Um, some do after like release. I actually have one that comes from a pretty affluent family, and after being around, other kids that aren't, as privileged, they were more grateful for the things that they have.
Okay, that's great. So again, resilience, I just wanted to pull out the big guns today. We're talking about different concepts here. Okay, so we're going to continue. So there's two ways to walk through life. One with a fear lens, and the other is to walk through life with a love lens. And in the area of fear, that's where we have constriction, anger, it's ego based thinking. I used the term before meta-based thinking because we're now moving into our thoughts. As an example, ego-based thinking is a competition. Jealousy is an example. The other is collaboration. That's the meta for it. The fear is the ego-based, and meta is love. And again, that's big picture here. Again, the lens we walk around with absolutely affects our physical body, just like I told you about the water study. So we know how powerful our thinking is. You've heard words like stinking thinking, um, thoughts, and this gets into beliefs. When you're working with clients, I think it's really important to challenge their beliefs. Now, that gets into the cognitive behavioral realm. We've just gone from existential to cognitive behavioral here. Maybe we should do a whole workshop on all these concepts here in psychology. But cognitive behavioral is really, looking at beliefs because everything that is the filter. If you feel like, or if they grew up feeling like a loser, they don't feel that they ever can go further, like really challenging limiting beliefs. So there are ways to do that with cognitive restructuring, asking them, what is the evidence to these thoughts? So there are so many techniques to help. Again, what are we really doing? We're again back to alchemy, which is helping someone turn the lead into gold. So, what I'd like to do is take a little break now. We've talked about a lot of concepts. I'd love for you to come back and say, I think this one resonates for me, and this is how I'm going to use it. So, I'll start with you, Ruby. The gratitude you mentioned. What about this discussion maybe called to you or appealed to you if you want to unmute?
Can you repeat your question, please?
Sure. Was there anything about our discussion today that felt like resonated with you, that felt like, oh, I can take this now back to my workplace and my life?
I would say dealing with what was it? Like hardships, when you were saying you were when you face hardships and how there was a term you used.
Suffering, and it
Right,
helps
the suffering.
to transformation and ultimately takes us to life purpose.
Yes.
Suffering to life purpose. So, how would you use that for yourself or in the workplace?
Well, when you were discussing like the having to go through it and how that kind of shapes you, I think I can use that. I mean, I know for myself, but maybe even with clients with, the hardships that they face, and let them know that to kind of stray away, encourage them to stray away from that victim mentality that you were talking about. Because I know I have a lot of clients that have that.
So, I have an image for all of you, and this has helped me in some real crisis situations with people who were ready to commit, murderous actions. I mentioned in the darkest part of the night is when the light comes. So if you ever have been up right before the light comes, it gets super dark. And that is a beautiful metaphor for what's to come. If someone is showing up at that super dark place where they can't see it, so that kind of light is right on the other side. So if you can walk with them and remind them that it is at the darkest part of the night the light comes. Thank you for sharing, Ruby. How about you, Samantha? What resonated for you today?
Everything you've said has resonated with me. I have so many notes, but I think, I try to find the positive and all of that and things to do. I think more personally, but in like when you said talking about with clients, I think I was sitting here this whole time going, okay, what do we do? What's the magic? How do we get them there? And I think, just when you said gratitude and having that daily practice with them is something. And then I also think when you said, and my notes are everywhere, all over, when you were talking about allowing them to talk about their past, really, and, sometimes just through that, maybe figuring out what that purpose is, and then reframing that suffering as growth and finding those skill sets. So I have lots of little nuggets, but I feel like those are just some things that really just were good reminders for me, that when we're working with our clients and what they may need or how we can help them see that in what they're going through.
And this reminder that everything they have been through will support their life purpose. There's a reason. It isn't just random. That's the key, making sense of it, from the radical acceptance to making sense. And that's what we see as we get later in life. Take your past with your present to create your future. Thank you. How about you, Bianca? What did you
Yeah,
resonate?
when you're saying that too, I was really thinking about, one of the things we try to talk to some clients is that, when you're in this darkness, especially with around work, there's this need to just, I will take any job, or I just need anything. And, from my, experience, maybe in working in the HR space, I think that when what we try to encourage people to do is to, what is it that you enjoy doing and following that path? Because when you're taking a job out of like desperation, the likelihood of you being successful and sustaining that job is much lower than if you really were honest about and live in your authenticity about what is it that you enjoy. And that again, that will, while that might take longer and there's more work to be done around that, that may help you sustain something that is closer to your purpose than something that is just right now. Because then we have the client coming back 3 months later going, yeah, that didn't work. Well, because you didn't want to do that, and that's not really where you are. So I think those things, connecting those two thoughts, was really something that stood out for me. So, and I'm conscious of our time, and I want to make sure that we get enough time for any questions. And if folks there's some announcements if anybody wants to make. But first, I want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. I feel like we saw so many of us taking notes and being inspired just by your spirit and presence, and
Thank you.
all of that. So
I want to add something on to what you said, which is
yeah,
really key here for your clients and their futures, is the closer matched to their values, the life purpose is, they'll have total joy and flow. And it really is about finding that joy, not the
yeah.
that is. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
So any
Are there any
questions? Yeah.
questions? Yeah, questions for Arna. I tried to kind of capture some highlights in the chat, which if you're able to capture those, and some links to the things that you shared with us. But any other questions for Arna?
I had a thought, if I could just share real quick,
Please.
just listening to this and taking the notes on the different, I guess, new fresh perspectives that you would give to whether it's people, new parents with a new diagnosis, and or people who have had encounters with the justice system. looking into that, their adverse experience, it's traumatic, and they are often stuck on that because it is so traumatic. It's painful. There's a lot of emotion that gets wired into the brain, and just listening to these are almost all like different ways of kind of trying to rewire that brain and redo the emotion. So whether it's radical acceptance or practicing gratitude, or thinking about love and cooperation versus the competition. For someone who's going through this kind of, you try all these different things, and it connects in my mind with also the therapies that we, including transcranial stimulation or some of the guided therapies with medication. These are all different ways of trying to get someone to break out of being stuck on their ACEs or their adverse childhood experience, and getting them to redo the perspective somehow to get out of that orbit, to relook at their lives and the possibilities. So I appreciate the toolbox, the tools you're bringing to the toolbox here.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, anyone else?
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Cosme Sandoval. I'm one of the directors at Chrysalis, and thank you for this space. I got on a little late, but I had a thought that popped in my head, and as you might see through the camera, I'm driving right now. My job has me driving from many locations, but everything that was shared resonated with me. I served 25 years in prison. I'm a former life term inmate. And now am at a position as one of the directors at a great organization. But a lot of things were covered that our experiences, our lives, tend to line up. And for me, it was a lot of traumatic experiences from youth that took me into those dark stages where eventually I was led to the light. And now I do my very best in my work, which I don't consider work because I love what I do, and I really enjoy it, to shed light and bring hope to all of the people that we serve. I do it through my job, and I do it through my life. And when you mentioned gratitude, I often share a story with people, and it's, sometimes I find myself in a lot of traffic. I find myself on the 405, on the 5, and whenever I get an inkling of frustration because of traffic, I look at the clock, and oftentimes it tends to be 5 o'clock. And then I remember where I was many years ago. Well, not many, about 7 years ago at 5 o'clock. And that's standing with my light on, waiting to be counted, being incarcerated. And so it gives me a sense of gratitude to be able to now be in traffic, heading to do something that I love, or to support somebody, or be on a call that helps somebody. We also mentioned, like, what's that, how do we lead them to the gold, and what is the gold? Well, and this is what I would share to any organization if they're looking for the gold, is hire people like myself that have that lived experience, because
That's right.
My greatest superpower is my lived experience. And when I sit down with a client that just got out and served maybe 20 years in prison and is confused and is overwhelmed and doesn't know how to use a cell phone, and is really thinking like, wow, it's much easier to be in prison than to be out here, I immediately go to my superpower and say, brother, sister, I've been there. I did this, and this is where I am today. And I don't do it bragging. I do it humbly to show that there's a potential and we can do whatever we want to do. I have friends that were cellmates that we walked the yard together now, that now have attained doctorates, are in law school, have their own businesses. And all of us at one time, yeah, we may have been lost. We may have been incarcerated and doing our time for whatever the case it was, but we did that already, and we didn't let it hold us down. So sharing those experiences, I believe, are those beacons of hope and that gold that we're searching for. And then one last thing that was shared, that oftentimes when we come home, we kind of sell ourselves short and we just say we want to take any job, right? And I think the reason being is that a lot of us went in at a very young age. I was 19 years old, paroled when I was 45. I never experienced much of anything. And the things that I did experience were negative. So when we are dealing with clients that are want to just take a job, it's because honestly, they do not know. They have not
Right.
experienced those great things that can be like what the joy is, what the work is. I ended up working for a nonprofit, not knowing what the heck I was doing and what I was getting myself into. And it was just because of an opportunity that presented itself to me a month after I paroled after serving 25 years. And I was very
Mhm.
transparent in my interview and said, I have no clue what you want me to do, but I'll be my best at it. And it has taken me to several nonprofits and now to be in the position that I am with Chrysalis. And I've used my superpower as my benefit, you know, as my asset to give back to my community. So this is awesome. This is a great space, and I'm glad that we've all been able to share it because I've gotten a lot out of it. It's brought back a lot of, you know, things from inside and here, and my experiences with clients that I serve and my team that I manage. And so, thank you so much for this space.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
thank you so much for sharing. A lot of this are reminders. Hopefully it jogs something inside. I'd like quickly to let everyone know that anybody here, or if you have any clients that you think the part of recovery, an important part is service. And here at the NAMI Orange County Warm Line, we are filling out with volunteers. We have about 100 right now that we're training, and we have a slot for another 100. So we can be a robust volunteer peer-led line where we offer peer training, peer supervision, and peer support. I thank the people that are in this group today that are currently on our warm line as volunteers. And I just wanted to say that please reach out to me if you decide, not only for yourself, but you know someone's at a certain level of recovery where you believe that volunteer service, we're asking for 2 4-hour shifts a week, and we will train you and give you that workforce experience. You will be speaking to underserved communities, people from all walks of life, as well. And to support that, I just think it's a really important part of ongoing recovery is the service. I want to give you my phone number really quickly, 310 614 5352, best to text 310-614-5352. My email address is, you'll see my name, well, maybe
I
my
put it
name
in
is
there. I put it in the chat,
good.
Arna.
Okay, I didn't see that. But anytime, if you do have anybody, the only thing that would prevent them is a violent felony because of our insurance, felonies, misdemeanors, any of that is fine. But I just wanted to thank everyone for your time today. It was so special spending this afternoon with all of you, and you also helped remind me of certain things as well. Bianca, thank you for inviting me,
Thank
and
you.
Samantha.
Thank you
Thank you
so
so
much.
much, Arna. Thank you so, so much. We appreciate you. We have a few minutes, 8 minutes, I think, to be exact. And I would love to give the opportunity of anybody who would like to share an announcement of anything that's happening in their world that they would like to share. If you'd like to drop anything in the chat, thank you, Anthony, for your link to free classes.
We have a couple announcements at Hire, just really quick. If you guys haven't heard yet, our resource fair will be Wednesday, September 17th at the Honda Center. Our next youth subcommittee meeting will be on October 8th. Our next employment subcommittee meeting will be on November 5th. We do have our interim center. We're anticipating opening that here early September. We'll keep you all posted on that. And then we do also have our time mentors with lived experience that go in and speak to individuals in juvenile hall that are facing 707 hearings and stuff. But we are also looking for other opportunities for our mentors with lived experience to come speak with any youth groups or anything like that. If you have any need for that, please reach out to me and I'd be happy to coordinate or discuss that with you all as well.
Great. I do want to share two things from Working Wardrobes. We have two new contracts that we are starting now that are around young adults, and one is through the City of Santa Ana WIOA program. It is for young adults between 16 and 24 who are out of school youth. So they either didn't complete high school, or they have their GED but they're not in college, or they're not working. And we have some financial services to provide for paid training and skill-based training programs, get them enrolled into schools, and full case management services. So if you have anyone that is interested, please let us know. And then secondly, similarly, we have another veteran young adults between 18 and 28 who are looking for support for again, skill-based training program. So if they maybe are interested in a skill-based training program and they don't have enough dollars, or you're trying to stack dollars, this is a full case management program that can help veterans and their spouses. They can also be reentry veterans and their spouses. And there's some supportive service funds, some what do you call it? Dollars around that. So paid dollars and supportive services for them too.
Great, thank you.
Anyone else? We did get confirmed that the OC PAC meeting is canceled. Thank you, Anthony. Frankie.
Hi, I want to share something coming up on the behalf of REI. So we are going to start hosting a quarterly behavioral health career fair for our students. So really what this is it's going to be a chance for our students to explore different career pathways in behavioral health, serving underserved populations. We have a lot of students who are either currently in or graduating training. So maybe they're graduating as a peer support specialist, as an alcohol drug studies counselor, alcohol drug use counselor, mental health worker. Those are just some examples. So I'll drop the flyer in the chat, but what we're looking for right now is a couple of things. I guess the first thing is we are looking for any employers or organizations that would be interested in tabling. You do not have to have job openings currently at your organization, but if you do, that would be awesome to promote. A lot of our students also are looking for volunteer work or internships. So a lot of our students are kind of looking for that stepping stone before entering the workforce, right? So if you have any kind of need for volunteers, that would be a wonderful opportunity. And then if you don't have either of those available, that's okay. It's a career fair, so we're also looking for organizations and folks who are interested in just talking about what they do on a day-to-day at their organization, so our students can learn about, you know, all the different kinds of jobs that exist out there with all the different kinds of populations they can work with. So if you're interested in any of that, feel free to reach out to me. I'm going to drop the flyer in the chat and my contact information is on there. If you have any clients or like members who are interested in attending, they do need to be REI students first, which is a relatively easy enrollment process. And if you have questions about that, you can also contact me directly. Ali B, did I miss anything from that you want to add on?
You said everything we were thinking.
Okay, I'm glad to hear it.
Thank you. I think we saw one more hand, maybe. Oh, is that it?
That's it.
Fantastic. This was a wonderful experience, everyone. Thank you so much for being
Yes.
open and sharing. And again, Arna, thank you for leading us in that conversation. I'm excited to get my copy of The Alchemist now. And we thanks, Frankie, for sharing the poster. So appreciate everyone, and we will see you next time. Have a great rest of your week.